Hey everyone, welcome to an episode of What's the Tea with Anew, Building Beyond Violence and Abuse. And we're the community education team, and we do an episode of What's the Tea every single Tuesday at 1 p.m. And my name is Zach, and I'm here with Angela Davis.
Hi.
How are you doing today, Angie?
Good, good. The weather's trying to get cold, but I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. It's Monday, but I've got my coffee, no tea, but I've got my You're on Mute mug here
Oh,
today.
see, yep. That's a good way to start your Monday. We know how Mondays are.
Yeah. So we wanted to do an episode on DV in the media. So we're gonna give you a heads up in a coming episode. We're gonna do an episode on the new Netflix show, The Maid, and that has some pretty realistic depictions of domestic violence. And that's kind of the topic of what we're gonna do today, kind of as a preview. But we didn't want to talk about the show without giving people a heads up. Also, we did the sports episode about maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago now, and this is kind of a continuation of that conversation. So, um, domestic violence depictions in the media. So, I guess we can start maybe with: do you think that they're accurate based on what we know, based on our work?
Um, I feel like it has its pros and cons. I definitely feel that over time, even if you go on Google, they're going to give you a list of different shows and movies that depict domestic violence. And I think it's one of those things where we have to understand that Hollywood films are going to be Hollywood films, and they are going to do whatever they can to still draw in that audience, whether it's facts or not. So I feel that with some things, as someone being trained in domestic violence or being an advocate, you can, maybe agree with, or you may see commonalities within the show. But I think it's safe to say that probably the directors that are coming out with these movies and TV shows are not 40-hour trained in domestic violence. So I can only assume that they could be going off stereotypes or what somebody else may have said, or looking up and reading stuff on Google. Not saying that directors may not have a personal story with it or know someone. But I think that when we are talking about streaming and making money and reeling in the audience, some things might be a, a little on the unrealistic side,
Mm-hmm.
just to, kind of make the film more interesting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think the first thing you were saying, like the bottom line, it's, they're not 40-hour trained, and they're not making a training video, right? So I like to think about like other comparisons, like things well, like you think about like an FBI show or like a police show. It's like not every day is that exciting, and it's like they catch a criminal every single episode.
Yeah, and I watch those and I'm like, are these episodes real, or are these like actors and actresses? Because this is just like too spot on.
Yeah, versus real life where it's a lot of like, writing parking tickets and speeding tickets and having one case or two cases like that in your entire career where it's like something very big and serious like that. So I think yeah, with domestic violence also, they're having a TV show, everything's going to get sped up, maybe a little exaggerated.
Yeah. I think also too, it's safe to say like some things, you may not see in the film, like, how the cycle of violence really is, or for example, I know when we were debriefing before this, just if I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Enough with Jennifer Lopez that came out a few years ago. I watched it and I just thought, oh, this is great. Feminism. She, it just depicts strong and powerful, right? you overcame, but it's like once you are in the work and you're trained and you rewatch things, we always talk about the team. You can't rewatch things the same because of your mind, how it's programmed with the knowledge that you know. So, for example, with the movie Enough, it depicts Jennifer Lopez falling in love, with this rich guy and getting married and having a baby. And then it turns abusive, which deteriorates, the marriage and the relationship. She somehow gets away. um she takes her child, she has this whole um change of identity. She starts taking martial arts classes. He confines her and she kills him, and everybody's like, yay, she did it. That's what we're talking about, and she got away with it. But in real life, we know that's not typical. Like, it's not that, first of all, it's not that easy for someone to leave in general with a child, but to be able to go and change her identity and things, like, not saying it does not happen, but it's not sending the truth of the matter that, first of all, if I am a victim and I've been abused and I kill my abuser, 9 times out of 10, I'm not just gonna walk away scot-free, like everything is okay. We always talk about too how with the criminal justice system, they want you to have a paper trail, and that you called the police or written things down, or so that right there, I think, is sending a message that, hey, if you're a victim of domestic violence and you kill your abuser, you're gonna be all right, when that's not the case at all.
Yeah, exactly. And then it just kind of ignores the whole trauma of killing someone too. Like, and that's like the kind of like the climax of the movie. It's like, oh, the grand ending, and that's really just
right. Because of course, on top of that, they sexualized it, right? She was in her little martial arts outfit, and they depicted her as looking sexy, but defending herself, and just promoting in the sexualization of things in the movie. That's a whole nother thing. Like, when you see movies, as we know, sexual abuse is a type of abuse in domestic violence, and a lot of films and TV shows tend to glamorize that as well, like, adding that as a bit of sparkle, in their TV shows, when this isn't doing anything but sending the wrong type of message or stereotypes, not only to the world, but maybe even the criminal justice system, of how they should view the victims or survivors, because once you believe a stereotype, you keep going with that, until you learn correctly that that's a stereotype.
yeah, exactly. And I think they do rely a lot on those stereotypes, because a couple of times we like scoured the whole internet trying to find like realistic depictions of dating violence for prevention for, you know, 6th grade through 12th grade, even for the 40-hour training. And at least for high school, I don't think we found a single one where it was like, it seemed realistic enough, it was like appropriate enough, and
Yeah.
there wasn't just like something added in where we had to stop the video every 5 seconds and be like, okay, no, like why, like
Right.
they'll throw in like a slur in there, or it'll just be, we would have to qualify everything, because as you were saying, like especially with teens and kids, I think it's, they see, if you see one depiction, you think that represents the entire gamut of what is possible, and um, only that one thing will really stick in their head.
Yeah, like the media in general, whether it's film or music, like that, it is transforming a lot of the mindset of our young people as well. So when we're doing these presentations and we're having these, you know, discussions back and forth, like, why don't you just leave, right? You may even hear them say, that's what they do on the movie. Why don't you just get up and leave? Like, or you could fight back, or you can do this, when in actuality, that's not realistic. And some of the things that we do see in the films will actually get someone killed who is in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could be a lot when you're viewing these films, you happen to see a lot of middle class and upper class white women having the resources to get away, having the resources to, make a difference in their lives. Whereas when you look up domestic violence film, it's not a lot that surrounds poor women or women of color and their dynamics and their situations of being in an abusive relationship. It doesn't really give that side of the story. The one famous thing that we could think of is the Ike and Tina movie, and that's coming from a celebrity point of view. And even then, when you are doing documentaries or movies based on someone who is popular, such as a celebrity, not all things are even correct. Not, sometimes they fabricate stories or names or situations in the movies. So it's also hard to where maybe that's why we only think white rich men are abusers, which is not the case, So when it's time to talk about other races being abusers, being victims, are we really depicting them in the correct light, that advocates see these things?
Yeah, definitely. And just there's so many services involved, and it just makes it seem like it's just a one thing that you have to do to leave the relationship. I mean,
Yeah.
there's legal barriers, financial barriers.
And all of that is skipped. And it would be great if you really show, the ins and outs of, going through the criminal justice system, all the legal things and, what it's like for a victim or survivor to possibly have to go into the shelter. What does that look like, And don't get me wrong, it's not all cons with these films, but of course, coming from the standpoint of being knowledgeable about domestic violence, we can always pick something out that does not seem right to us. Or, someone next to us could just be watching a film and we're like, oh, she's in an abusive relationship. Watch. And at the end, he's going to be the one. And like, we can see things or pick things out much faster than someone else who may not work in our field.
Yeah, I think probably like the most realistic thing that I see when I see it in the media is like when an abusive incident happens and then everyone just kind of ignores it. And then they kind of go back to like if it's like not the main part of the show or the movie, and it's just kind of like ignored, pushed under the rug, and then the characters do what they do, but you can tell it has an effect on the victim and the people.
Yeah.
That to me is like
that's right. Because Lifetime and the soap operas, they're good for those type of things of when something happens and they ignore it, and it like you said, it's clearly affecting the victim. But everyone tries to kind of stay in their business or talk them into staying while they should stay, whether it's, family pressure or shaming or things of that nature. You do tend to see a lot.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is the pressure around it too, and the reasons why. So that is good. Do you think there's any other pros or any other positives?
I mean, well, when you think about it, majority of the films, they have a agenda, they have a message that they do want to portray, whatever that is. So I do think with some movies and films, you got to understand, it's just like music. When you can relate to the music and you've been there before, you felt those feelings before, so you understand. When it comes to movies and TV shows, people get the same type of feelings off of it. You have your favorite movie, whether that's just because it's funny, it's a good movie, maybe when you were going through your hardest time, that movie got you through things. But I do feel that these films, like we said, can have some commonalities in it of maybe a victim or survivor watching that like, I went through that. Oh, I remember how that felt. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that she was able to get out or he was able to get out. So I do feel that these films out here definitely comforts some of the individuals that have been through this, because you can still relate to it, because again, how an advocate might view it could be different from how a victim or survivor views it, just as it can be different from someone who has no knowledge about domestic violence. I'm just watching a movie, so everybody can view it differently. So I definitely feel as though it could be relatable.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely could be relatable. Not all films are, just horrible. It's just that, of course, being more realistic, it could be helpful. But I definitely feel that it helps them relate, and maybe, or you're watching it and you feel as though, hey, somebody who made this movie, they get it, they understand. I'm not the only one who's been through this. So I definitely feel like that could be a positive in it.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's almost like the moral of it, it's with, like everyone can kind of sense like, oh, well, this is what happened to this person and they're stronger because of it, or we all know that it's like morally wrong and it's depicted that way, and you can kind of feel that even if the kind of the details are inaccurate.
Yeah, or you can pick up on the warning signs, or you can see things, and maybe you're sitting there like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe that isn't right. And then if it happens in your relationship, you can, you know, become aware of that, because maybe you don't have anybody that talks to you about these type of topics. And maybe you have learned something from watching the movies, or, you learn things when you listen to music, different things of that nature as well.
Yeah, definitely. Just because in general, I think like there's just so much violence in just media in general. I know we kind of talk about this in the 40-hour training that we do, but it's like you just get desensitized to it after a while, and it depending on how exaggerated it is, if it's over the top, you're just gonna think, you're just gonna like, oh, that's not, oh, people don't, maybe someone, oh, they don't go through it, can't be that bad, this is the TV, everything's
Right, or everybody's going through it, right? It is deemed as normal, just like when we talked about when there's always some sexual violence depicted in the movies. When our young people are coming up watching this, or even with our adults, anybody, you can deem that as normal. Like, oh, I knew that was going to happen. Or, you're just like, oh, okay, next scene, what's next? Like it's just deemed as normal, which can be very unfortunate, because that can also create stereotypes and victim blaming, when it comes to victims or survivors. You make up in your head your own stereotypes about people going through this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has that tit for tat, just like that JLo story you were saying. It's like always with the revenge, and to make the story kind of go full circle, where, in real life you kind of just have to, even if it's really hard, just forget or forgive, and
Yeah.
to just put it behind you. Not You're not really gonna have
Right.
that ultimate like moment.
Yeah, and even like, of course, in that video, she was scared. She didn't know how to defend herself. She had to take martial art classes because she was scared to fight back. But it's also important to depict the fact that that's very dangerous. Even, even you trying to take martial art classes, if you still had your abuser, stalking you or following you, how that can even put you in danger, or just thinking about fighting back could put you in danger, like that's not realistic that every woman fights back and kills their perpetrator. And, it's great that you want to show women in that light of being powerful and things, but I mean, hey, what if I'm sitting at home and I'm like, well, JLo did it, it's my turn, I'm gonna try, and that doesn't go well, so it's very unfortunate, or it's unrealistic for me to just wake up today like, yep, changing my identity, like it's kind of hard to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, it always just reminds me of being in the schools with prevention. It's like that's like the typical like starting place. Like we go into a junior high. It's like, well, if someone did that, then I would just get revenge on them, and I
Right,
would
or they
solve the
always
violence with
say,
violence.
Right. Or Mr. Zach, did you see that movie when, and you could just do that? That was easy. They got away with it. So everybody has their depictions on what you should do based off what you are seeing or hearing on TV or on the radio or things of that nature.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I don't know. I think another good thing too is when you are watching these movies and these films, it can definitely bring awareness. It could definitely bring awareness to family and friends, or people just going through it that may not have even thought about, oh, that could be a warning sign, or, oh, okay, maybe that's how somebody acts if they're in an abusive relationship or going through something, or, so I do feel as though it can bring um a lot. It can bring awareness to people around you, whether it's depicted factually or not. It can still bring awareness to where you can hopefully pick up signs as well if you see something similar in your loved one.
Yeah, I think that's true, because I think it does make it maybe easier to talk about. If you kind of see it on a film, it's a little bit more abstracted. That's like something they do in like play therapy with kids. Like,
Okay.
you do like a puppet show, or you put on like a story, and then it's like, well, now it's kind of easier to talk about these harder things because you kind of have.
Right. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
not.
hopefully, yes. Hopefully, like if you're watching this movie with your parents or your friend, hopefully a conversation can stem after that afterwards. Like, hey, have you ever been through this? Or, what did you think about that movie? Not saying it happens all the time, but hopefully, it creates dialogue as well to just talk about these type of things.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm curious to see, will the Maid be just another one of these shows? But because full disclaimer, I haven't seen it yet. Before, I wanted to do one before and after with it.
Yeah.
But we are hearing realistic depictions and mostly positive things, but maybe a few critiques for that video.
Yeah. Definitely, definitely been hearing I don't know. Facebook is a weird place, man. You hear a lot, you hear a lot of people that's like, who may or may not have been through it or don't know much about it, that's speaking down on, her or the situation, or, she was acting this way, or why didn't she do this or this and that, so you always shows in general, you're going to hear the positives and negatives about it. Everybody going to always have something to say, but I definitely feel as though this has been one of the main shows that's really being talked about, that has brought, some updated awareness to domestic violence and, relationship violence. So yeah, I'd be interested to watch it as well, to start viewing, my own thoughts and seeing if it's realistic or not. I guess I haven't watched it yet because everybody's like, oh, I cried off of it. And I'm just like, nope, not doing that today. So hopefully we'll see. We encourage you all to, you haven't, start watching The Maid. Take it one episode at a time. Just start watching it so that you can be with us in the comments as we start trying to dialogue The Maid, and talk about the pros and cons and things of that nature. And it is on Netflix. So if you do have a Netflix subscription, we do suggest you watch it.
Yes, find one of your friends, and if you don't have Netflix,
yeah, just ask them for their username. It's fine.
just one time.
Maybe. No, just kidding. But yeah, so we definitely encourage you all to watch that. And, hopefully we're watching this. Maybe you haven't seen Enough before. Go check that out. Maybe you haven't seen the I Can See the movie before. Go check that out. Give you some critical thinking movies to start watching. Because those are pretty interesting as well. And now you can view it with the different context, or maybe go back and watch it and see if your opinions or thoughts has changed about it.
Absolutely. Any closing thoughts for this episode?
No, just thank you for tuning in. If you have any, I know this is pre-recorded, but if you have any comments about anything that we made today, please put them in the chat. We love when you all dialogue and talk with us. Please put it in the chat. We would really like to hear your thoughts and opinions about these films. Maybe there's a film that we haven't discussed that you watched that you want to bring awareness to. That's cool too. Put it in the chat. And we just encourage you all to just keep up with us on Tuesdays at 1:00 p.m. And if you have any questions or concerns, again, just let us know. And remember, same time, same place, different tea. And we hope you all have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.